In this video we're going to take a look at what we call the zero postings, zero carrier fee model verifier. Okay, so I noticed this payment. I want to concentrate on this payment. If we get payments in through an era that have a few postings, it's always quite easy to see if there is a problem with it or if we need to do something about it. So let's say here a small one here. There are a few, etc., etc. But if there are more postings, then it becomes more difficult. Particularly the zero postings and eventually the zero carrier fees need additional attention, and the negatives. All that stuff needs more reflection. Okay, it is possible to go through them, and the operator should go through them individually and say, well, you know, is this acceptable with these era remark codes? Often, somebody with a little bit of experience can do it. Still, it is a bit of work, and particularly with those big ones, like this one, it would be useful to have a little help. See all these zeros? The experienced operator again will immediately recognize what is okay and what is not okay. But in order to facilitate that verification process, we have the possibility to not completely, but to take out a large bunch of doubtful postings through an application. So we project the payment to postings, and then we have here zero carrier fees, zero postings analysis. What does that do? Let's run it. Here it goes. It brings us two windows back. One that says, is this correct? You have a zero allowable with the question mark. Is this correct? And the other one, you have zero postings. Is that correct? Now, it is often possible, like take for instance here the venipunctures. It is a known fact that some payers will pay and others will not pay. So actually, we should not have to worry about this. How do this particular case, and there are other situations like that, how do we indicate to Xmatic if you get a certain combination of era remark codes and either zero postings or zero allowables, how do we indicate that we know that and that's okay? Don't flag that as an error. We take those postings and we project them to era remark codes. And we set on the era remark codes what our judgment is on those situations. So on the zero allowables, we get 9 era remark codes. Now we go over those. This is typically a case where you would say, well, actually, now that we look at this, I would at this point even argue the adjudicated, because they are not paying and they say there is another payer, which means you don't want to zero post this one. This should not have been posted at all, because we're waiting on an eventual other carrier. You may want to verify what the other carrier is, so you get them back in your ERA as a not adjudicated, requiring additional attention. So we correct this like this. Here again, this is a not adjudicated. So we should not have this in here. Actually, we don't have it in here. We do have it in here, and I'm wondering why. But let's continue. Included. This is typically one where you would say, take the zero, allow the charge to be modified to zero, but indicate that if we get this ERA remark code, that is correct, that this can be a zero carrier fee. And in fact can also be a zero posting. So those can be zero carrier fee and can be zero posting, act on the zero posting, zero carrier fee application that we just ran. So we take those out. They will not be considered by that verifier to be erroneous. Next. Missing patient medical record is a not adjudicated. Separately billed service. See, this is again a situation whereby we will usually allow the allowables to be modified, written down, but we will not flag this as an error condition. This requires, in my view, a review and should not have been adjudicated. Decision based on review of claims for claims. Okay. This is one of those halfways. If you want to oppose this decision, you have adjudicated off. But then you have to file an appeal. If you're not usually inclined to file an appeal on this, then you better accept the modification on the charge and you say this can be zero posted. Duplicate claim. So we say this is adjudicated, but we will not modify the allowable, the carrier fee. We will accept that this can be a zero posting. So this is again, this should not be adjudicated because this requires additional, unless you see, that's why those decisions remain related to the practice policy. Because you could say, no, I want to verify, I want to contact the patient and find out what the correct insurance is. But you can also say, no, I consider this adjudicated. I will not accept a write-off because it will then flow on the patient statements onto patient responsibility, and then it's the patient's task to come back and say, oh, but I was insured at another insurance company. Okay. So that depends on what you want to do. in this particular case, my choice would be to adjudicate and allow cannot be identified because it will then be a zero posting. Okay, so we've now set some of these choices to act differently on the zero allowable, zero posting application. We can do that with the other window too. So we go here, zero postings, and we project this to the ERA remark codes. Okay, there are a bit more, but okay, let's go over them. Another payer. So we already had this in the other window. Okay, so this is the patient is consuming more services than is available within his or her policy. We can adjudicate. We will not write off. And we will say that this can be a zero posting. It can also be a zero carrier fee. Is required, okay? Document, so this is a not adjudicated because this can be re-uploaded after that the documentation has been sent. Exceeds the fee schedule. This is the normal write-off, so this can be updated. The charge. Can it also be a zero posting, a zero carrier fee? I would say normally that would put it in the suspect category for the CO45. So I would leave this like this. The benefits is included. Okay, we already saw this one. Missing medical record should be not adjudicated because you can submit the medical record. Okay, this we already did too. Consult information. Yeah, we don't get any reason why, which means this can be zero posting because this is for the patient in principle. Unless you say, no, I want to take a second look at that guidelines information, in which case you may want to keep this not adjudicated. But that increases the number of postings that will not be auto-posted and that will require manual intervention. Okay. See, this is also typically something that you would not want to consider adjudicated, because this is a repairable condition. So you'd rather keep it out of auto posting to be able to be attracted to it as a not adjudicated service and repair it. We go on. It's primary. This is an insurance issue. Here again, I say not adjudicated, so that you can either contact the patient or do something. But there is a policy, and some people do that, who say, I don't want to spend the time going after the patient. It's the patient's responsibility to provide the correct information. If they don't, then Xmatic will issue a statement. If this is adjudicated, we will not, under that circumstance, allow the carrier fee to be modified, but we will say it can become a zero posting, in which case, if we set this up like this, this will go to the patient. The patient will have to pay the full balance, and then the patient may come back with additional insurance information. So these decisions around these error remark codes are closely related to how the practice operates. I would in this case say let's not adjudicate it and try to get the correct insurance information. Here, this is again exceeds so this goes to the patient. Adjudicated, we will not modify the allowable, and we will say this can be a zero posting. This is similar, so okay, this we already did, and we leave it as is. Other adjustments will normally not be a carrier fee upload, but it can be zero posting. Okay. Other adjustment, the impact prior payers. This is usually a secondary, which means we will not allow the carrier fee to be modified. And this is not particularly related to other circumstances, so I don't think we can say that it can be zero posting. At least I'd leave this off because it might be suspect if we get a zero posting on an OA23. Patient deductible, okay, that can of course modify the carrier fee. It can be a zero posting because if the deductible takes the full amount, then it can be a zero posting. Balance coinsurance. Balance coinsurance. Can this be reasonably, can this be a zero posting? I would say no, because it tells us that there is a patient balance. Patient became other payer. See, this is typically again where one would say this should not have been adjudicated because there is other insurance conditions, unless, as we just discussed, you say, well, I don't want to deal with that, it's too much time, I will accept the posting, not allow the carrier fee to be modified, and I will say it can be zero posting, in which case, unless there are other error remark codes that decides differently, in this case, this would then go to the patient. The patient will see that there may be other insurance, and they will then have to provide you with that other insurance. So that's a business policy. For now, let's leave this like this, just to have all the usual actions covered. Okay, we can update the fee schedule. We can update here the allowable, patient copay. I would say let's leave the zero posting, zero carrier fee thing out of the loop. See, this is again cannot be identified. Like this, it will jump to the patient. Patient responsibility, no covered charges. No covered charges, we will not take the allowable, but we will say that it can be zero posting. Okay, so now we have a somewhat better somewhat more thoughtful parametering available for our zero posting, zero allowable verification. Here we go again. And we run this out now again with our new choices. And we see that we have quite a bit of success, at least with the 0 allowables, because these, the ones that now remain, could be really cases where we need to look into, because that's the whole purpose of this verifier, to limit the number of suspect cases to real cases that need to be addressed. See, now we start to see a different picture. Now, once you have your ERA remark codes settings optimal, and you see there's quite a bit of thought necessary to understand how these settings interact with this verifier application. But once you have balanced all these effects out, the result should be the ones that really require individual attention. So that means after that you received ERA remark codes, and particularly these big ones, you run this verifier routine and then say, okay, so those are suspect. Those need more close consideration.